Well, hello, everyone. I am Matt Williamson, coming to you from my dorm room here in Latrobe, PA. Just finished up practice, just finished up recording the drive with Rob King and my man Dale Lawley. I wanted to chat with you, pull back the curtain. As of this second, as I'm recording this at 3:06 p.m. on Wednesday, August 7th, Brandon Ayuk is not a Steeler. And I do promise you, as soon as I humanly can, the second that happens, which I tend to think it will, but I don't have that knowledge. I don't think anyone knows for sure, despite what you're reading at this stage. I will give you something on that along that line as well. But this podcast will hold up for a couple days either way. And the Steelers released their depth chart on Tuesday. And frankly, there's not a whole lot of shock there. I mean, a couple news and notes and this correlates with practice. But starting with the offensive line, Broderick Jones is listed as the starting right tackle. For some reason, they have Troy Fautanu as the backup left tackle, although he has not played one snap of left tackle that I've seen. And Dan Moore is the starting left. That being said, as we talked about yesterday, this is the second practice in a row where Fautanu, it looks like he is now the starting right tackle. I mean, that's how these last two practices have gone. I know that's a small sample size. Jones and Moore have been rotating at left with the ones. I think that's all good news. I wouldn't look into it too much if Jones, it hasn't kick Dan Moore out of the equation. That shouldn't happen yet. It didn't happen yet. It hasn't happened yet. Wouldn't even shock me if Broderick Jones doesn't start this game coming up. That being said, what I think is going on and kind of reading the tea leaves and talking to people is they want Fautanu to play a lot. You're the right tackle. Looks like you're passing every test. We loved you coming out. All those good things. And Jones, we've had you, unfortunately for you, and I know you can do both, but we've had you do so much at the right side. Let's ease you back into left. Get your footwork right, your hand placement correct. We don't need Alex Highsmith beating you 100 times in a row because you're a little backwards at the moment. So let's ease you back into that. And kind of like we talked about last week, might not be long before he's clearly left tackle. I think this stuff will clear itself up as immediately. Herbig's ahead of Frazier on the depth chart. No shock there. And Frazier hasn't earned it yet. I'm not saying he's a bad prospect or I'm worried about him, but he hasn't earned it. Herbig's been better. I think it's clear, and the depth chart shows this as well, that Van Jefferson is the number 2 receiver, and he is listed as such. I mean, the 3 receivers they list in amongst the starters are Pickens and Jefferson on the outside, Calvin Austin as the slot or / third guy, Roman Wilson right behind him. Okay, that all adds up to, even though Roman Wilson isn't doing much, but we're getting some good reports on him, by the way. I think he's out of a boot for the most part. Maybe we will actually see him before the regular season. That would be great. They list Connor Hayward as a fullback ahead of Jack Coletto, but they do very different things. I mean, I can understand Hayward's also listed as the third tight end ahead of Michael Pruitt, ahead of Rodney Williams. I actually think Coletto and Hayward will both be on this team and have some special teams value as well. On the defensive side of the ball, there's not a ton to report in terms of the depth chart being released. All the starters are the people you would think, and maybe you wouldn't think this, but the starting nickelback is Beanie Bishop. And maybe that's the most shocking thing to you on the depth chart amongst the starters. Okay. Sutton is listed as the third nickelback for obvious reasons. I mean, I think he should just have an asterisk by his name. And Graylin Arnold, who is a name you need to know. Pay attention to him in these upcoming preseason games. He's the backup nickel. He has special teams capabilities. He could make this team. I found it interesting that they listed Ryan Watts as a strong safety. And I also was intrigued today that he was one of the few guys on the starting kickoff and kickoff return team. I think that's a really promising situation for Watts. And the backup outside corners, I also think, are notable in that it's Trice backing up Jackson and Rush backing up Porter, which would be great. If they can hold down the fort and are quality number 2s when the season starts, I'll take it. I mean, so I think that's a good thing. BetOnline's your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, and so many more. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So it has also come out that Mike Tomlin had a press conference this morning, Wednesday morning. He is going to play the starters, but resting 7 players. Russell Wilson, who's slowly getting back into being the top quarterback, but they want to play Fields a fair amount. Isaac Seumalo isn't going to play at all. They've been resting him a lot. And I think it's also an opportunity for these young guards, particularly McCormick and Anderson, to run with the ones. And I think they've been quite good. And frankly, I think this coaching staff is really high on their guards overall. Cam Hayward's not going to play. TJ Watt's not going to play. Highsmith isn't going to play. Minka's not going to play. I don't think that shocks anyone. Maybe Highsmith's not quite to the level of Watt, Hayward, Minka, but he's very important, and I think it shows how much they value him. And then the last guy that is going to sit out that game is Patrick Queen, which I wasn't sure if he would or not, just because he's new. Does he get the same respect? But I think they've seen more than enough of him, to be honest with you, to say we are keeping him in bubble wrap. He is a really important every down player that is going to play a lot of snaps, hopefully, in this regular season and maybe into the playoffs. So we are not going to put him in harm's way in any way, shape, or form. Makes me really think that they have no worries about him wearing the green dot or any of that kind of stuff, communication. So I thought that was a really good sign, too, that they're resting him. Now, I don't know how to take this, but word out of Houston, who, remember, they played in the Hall of Fame game. So this is their second preseason game coming up, is they are going to, quote, play their starters. Now, are we going to see Stroud and Diggs and Danielle Hunter and Tunsil and some of their stars that have been a little older? I know Stroud's not, but he's a starting quarterback and he's a star. Maybe. I mean, again, it's their second game. None of those dudes played at all in the Hall of Fame game. But I'm also hearing, much like the Hall of Fame game, we might get really bad weather for the preseason game here in Pittsburgh. Like, there's a massive storm coming through. And so a lot of this stuff might even change. I mean, that's unfortunate. If field conditions are bad or it's really hard to operate, it's hard to evaluate these players. That being said, I'm guessing that maybe you'll get Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter as the defensive ends for a series or 2, which would be great for those tackles we just talked about. Maybe you'll get some of their top receivers. I'm sure Tank Dell won't play. He's been coming back from injury. But maybe get Nico Collins for a little, or see how the Joey Porter does against him. Things like that. So I do think this is a good team to play. And I think Tomlin even recognized, he said something along the lines of, we're happy that they have a game under their belt and we don't, because that kind of gives Houston's, especially young guys, a little bit of a leg up. So that's a nice, challenge for us. And of course, Fields is starting. It doesn't sound like he's going to play a ton, but all that is good news to me. I think this will be a fun game to evaluate. Like always, the fourth quarter won't be great, I'm sure. And the other note, though, and I think I mentioned this to you guys yesterday, is I really do believe, going back to those guards and some of this O-line talk we started the show with, that their second team O-line is probably one of the better ones in the league. So therefore, when you have the twos out there on offense, I'm thinking, the second team O-line with Allen and not Najee or Warren, not Pickens, not Freiermuth, I would expect that group to still be pretty good, because these lines that have played together and are quality players deep into preseason games, just lend to a lot less sloppiness and mistakes and communication errors, and easier to evaluate these guys. Although I hope the weather doesn't ruin that or vastly change it. So that's where we're at. Again, if something on Ayuk breaks, all over it, but I'm not going to comment on stuff that hasn't happened. Over and out. Take care.